Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. And since today we're talking about President Trump's second impeachment trial in the United States Senate, I thought it'd be very fitting to talk about his potential chances at the 2024 presidential election should he be acquitted. Now, before he actually gets to being on the finalized ballot, he needs to win the Republican primary. And I want to talk about the Republican primary because it is important to note that this primary is likely to be nearly as crowded, if not more, than the 2020 Democratic primary, which had nearly 25 candidates, at least major candidates, well over 25 if you add in minor candidates. But overall, the main takeaway here is that 2024's Republican primary could be a repeat of the 2016 Republican primary, whether Republicans like it or not. The problem with Donald Trump as a candidate is that he doesn't need to win the majority of the vote in order to win the election. In 2016, he won the general election without the majority of the vote, and in the 2016 Republican primary, every candidate dropped out without Donald Trump being in the majority of the Republican Party's favor. So overall, this is something that President Trump is well versed in. He can win with just a plurality, and he can do that whether it's the general election or the Republican primary. But that's the first step. And that's really the only step we're going to be talking about because this is more than one video. We are going to be talking about President Trump's chances at 2024 until he decides to run or not to run, and continuing on if he decides to run because he's the immediate front runner. And, that's something that really should surprise many Republicans, but also in a way not surprise them. You see, the Republican primary is very predictable. If Donald Trump chooses to run, he probably won't face any opposition from candidates that were huge proponents of his 2020 re-election campaign. Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, Chris Christie, these Republicans are likely not to run if Donald Trump does run, especially candidates like Mike Pence or Nikki Haley. In 2016, what we saw was that Donald Trump only received 44.9% of the popular vote. He did not win the majority of the popular vote. Hillary Clinton won the majority of the popular vote. So looking at, 2016, the Republican counterpart to the primary season, Donald Trump was able to win the primary, win nearly 1,000 more delegates than the runner-up, with just 44.9% of the vote. And this was a plurality win. This was not a large win for Donald Trump whatsoever. I mean, looking at the numbers, honestly, if this was the Democratic primary, he probably would have come a lot less closer to the Republican Party nomination. In fact, if there was a superdelegate system, Ted Cruz might in fact be president today, or might have been president for the past 4 years. But that's all besides the point. Looking at the Republican primary, I want to walk you guys through exactly what happened in 2016 and why Donald Trump could replicate that exactly on the presidential level. So, before we get into 2016, I want to actually take a look at the 2024 preliminary presidential polling data. Why do I care? Well, when you take a look at the nationwide numbers, it'll give you a good idea of what the race is shaping up to be like, because generally the front runner 3 years out has a very good shot at winning the nomination. There's only, a few instances where it doesn't actually end up happening. Looking at this, what we see is that President Trump consistently leads. I'm highlighting here in red. You can see this is President Trump's numbers. He has never dipped below high 30s. And I know that doesn't seem like a lot. For someone who's the incumbent president, it does not seem like a lot. But that dip was during, the immediate following the Capitol insurrection, and it's since returned to being extremely high. 45% doesn't seem like a lot. Does not seem like a lot for an incumbent president, but overall the average is pretty strong. It is pretty strong for President Trump. Taking a look at these numbers, there is no way Mike Pence runs against Donald Trump. There's no way Donald Trump Jr. runs against Donald Trump. It's not going to happen. If Trump enters into the race, he will clear the field. He will only face opposition from political opportunists, people that have been eyeing up 2024 since Trump won the nomination in 2016. So looking at 2024 numbers so far, Donald Trump takes the lead. Donald Trump is ahead. And that's something the Republican Party is going to have to realize. Donald Trump is ahead. He can win this primary, absolutely. And while he isn't getting the majority of the vote, he's getting the plurality. So the most recent poll is from Echelon Insights, which shows Donald Trump at 45%, other 37%, and just 19% undecided. Well, if that undecided splits in half, what do you get? 9.5% with Donald Trump, giving him a total of 54.5%, and then 9.5% going to the 37%, ultimately bringing the total to 46.5%. So looking at the numbers themselves, what this does, or sorry, not 43.5%. It would actually be 40, not 43. I can't do math. 1 second. Let me add it up really quickly. Maybe I did get it right. 46.5%. Yeah, that should be correct, I guess. 48. I don't know why I can't do this. Wait, 999. Oh my gosh. What am I doing? Do these numbers add up? Hold on. 1 second. Let me double check because that doesn't make sense. Did they publish it wrong? Whatever. Okay, it doesn't add up. It does not add up to a total 100. That's where the percentage Y, I was confused as to where it went. I guess has an extra percentage. Whatever. Polls do that sometimes. I don't know. Just had a very weird moment looking at it and questioning whether or not it was actually telling me there was 101% respondents to this poll. But sometimes they do that. You know, that doesn't invalidate the poll. Sometimes they just round up and the numbers end up that way. So yeah, 50. It should end up being 54.9 to 46.5. But obviously that adds up to more than 100. So I'm not going crazy here. But let's go ahead and take a look at the numbers now. So 45%, keep that number in mind. 45% with 19% undecided could easily split over to Donald Trump. So that 45% number, does that do you recognize that number on the 2016 Republican presidential primary? It's very interesting that Donald Trump was able to win this primary, make everyone drop out, and only receive 45% of the vote. And this is the total popular vote after everyone had dropped out. So the numbers actually weren't as high. They were not as high. So looking at Donald Trump's performance here, it was just the fact that the race was too split. They couldn't coalesce around one candidate. Had they done that, Donald Trump would not have been the president. He simply would not have won the election because if they could have coalesced around an anti-Trump candidate, guarantee you they would have gotten that 55%. Absolutely. But since there was a split between Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, John Kasich, and the 19 other Republicans, it became very difficult to make a clear distinction as to who this second place person would be. When Ted Cruz and John Kasich ran against each other, being the last two in the primary, ultimately one of them had to drop out. Neither of them did, and they ended up dropping out days apart, leading the way to Donald Trump winning the Republican presidential primary. But let's take a look at how things have changed over time and what actually led Donald Trump to victory thanks to this Republican primary system. Well, what the Republican primary does is a lot of the races are winner take most. What does that mean? If you win, your chances are you're going to get over 50% of the delegates. Winner take all, of course, means if you win even by 1%, you win all of the delegates, and there are very few races that are considered to be proportional. But what we saw is that Donald Trump actually ran a campaign where he was running against countless other Republicans, the same way Joe Biden ran against countless other Democrats. There was not one candidate that could be coalesced around by the entire party to say that, Donald Trump should not be the Republican primary. Take a look at the list of people who withdrew during the primaries. Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, John Kasich, Ben Carson, Jeb Bush, Rand Paul, Mike Huckabee, Carly Fiorina, Chris Christie, Jim Gilmore, Rick Santorum. The list goes on before the primaries too. George Pataki, Lindsey Graham, Bobby Jindal, Scott Walker, Rick Perry. These are all people who ran for president and ended up withdrawing. And they ended up, pretty much just telling Donald Trump that he can end up becoming the nominee without really anyone worrying. Looking at the primary system, this is actually the results by delegate count. And what you see is that there are some states where the delegates are split, but take a look at those numbers, right? When someone wins a state, let's take Georgia, for example. Donald Trump received roughly, I believe, 35, 36, 37% of the vote here, but he received 42 delegates. Ted Cruz received 18 and Marco Rubio received 16. Now, I want to point out that if that vote was combined, they likely would have overcame Donald Trump. But looking at his primary performances, he didn't exactly win by majorities. They have the results by state in terms of popular vote, and what do you notice is that for the majority of these states, Donald Trump did not, majority of the states before everyone dropped out. Keep that in mind because some of these races, people had dropped out. But looking at these numbers, right? Donald Trump, looking at these pie charts, Donald Trump did not get the majority of the vote in many of these states. Take a look at Virginia, right? He won roughly 1/3 of the vote. He won a lot of the delegates there, shaded in blue. He won, almost defeated by Ted Cruz in North Carolina, but still won it because of that vote splitting. Had this vote share been, combined, Donald Trump would have not been the Republican nominee in 2016. The states that he was winning, because of their winner-take-all system, it was very difficult for President Trump to be, or at the time, businessman Donald Trump to be defeated by these Republicans. And, as we take a look, we're not going to focus too much on the polling data. Just I want to show you that when everyone dropped out, Donald Trump was at 45%, never once surpassed that, never was at 50%, became the front runner with just 28% of the vote. That's how much this race was divided. Then Donald Trump with just 28% was the front runner and declared the expected to win candidate. But we had the early primaries, and we're going to go through the primaries, looking at it because it is very interesting. It is very, very interesting. You see, what happened here was that, because they could not coalesce around a candidate, Donald Trump came in second place in Iowa, and that pretty much led him to victory. That doesn't seem like a lot, but Iowa hasn't voted with the correct Republican presidential nominee for a long time now, and 2016 was another example of that when there isn't an incumbent Republican president. Keep that in mind. But looking at that, it led to Donald Trump winning New Hampshire. He won 11 delegates there. Ted Cruz got 3, Marco Rubio got 2, John Kasich got 4, but no one was able to get double digits like President Trump. And then South Carolina was a winner-take-all system. So despite Donald Trump only winning 32.5% of the vote, he won every single delegate because the vote was split amongst Bush, Carson, Kasich, Rubio, and Cruz, which would have easily defeated him had they been around 1, possibly 2 candidates. Donald Trump ended up getting all 50 delegates. And then in Nevada, it was proportional, so he didn't exactly win that many, but he got 46% of the vote. And then hit Super Tuesday. And this was a very good performance for all of the Republicans, I would say. Donald Trump was able to win 255. Ted Cruz received 218. So it looked as if the race was going to get closer, that Ted Cruz would be that one candidate to be supported. But what we saw was that some of these races ended up being pretty solid for Donald Trump, even though he didn't win the majority of the vote. In Alabama, he won 36 delegates, but only 43% of the vote. In Arkansas, he won 16 delegates, but only 32.8% of the vote. 39% in Georgia, 49% in Massachusetts, 39% in Tennessee, 33% in Vermont, and 35% in Virginia. The problem was for these other Republicans that the vote was being split, and ultimately Donald Trump ended up picking up those states that are winner-take-all, despite winning 0 Super Tuesday states by a simple majority. That just didn't happen, unfortunately for President Trump, but also in a way, unfortunately for a number of other Republicans because they ended up going to Donald Trump at the end of the day, despite him not winning by a majority. And then we had more primaries to look at. Donald Trump's victory still had not surpassed 50% in a single primary state. The problem, splitting the vote amongst other Republicans. Take a look at Kentucky. 32% for Cruz, 16% for Rubio, 14% for Kasich. Donald Trump received 36%. Had that vote been combined, it would have been an absolutely obliterating victory for that one candidate, but Donald Trump takes away as the winner and another state added to his list. Take Louisiana. Just 3% added from Rubio or Kasich would ultimately have put Ted Cruz over the top. Did not happen. Take a look at Hawaii. Just adding that 13 points and that 10 points on top of Cruz would ultimately defeat Donald Trump by a very large margin in Hawaii. He ended up defeating everyone else by a minimum of 11 points. So the main takeaway is that Donald Trump was able to obliterate these candidates with what? Not winning a single primary outside the Northern Mariana Islands up until late March and April, with just a plurality. And that ultimately was what was very, surprising about this Republican primary presidential process is that because of the winner-take-all system, someone can just win with a simple plurality and absolutely dominate the field. What do we see here? Arizona, 46% of the vote went to Donald Trump. What do we see? The only state where he actually went over 50% so far was New York. That was on April 19th, the first time he actually won. So looking at the rest on, because we saw no one could really coalesce around these candidates, and it just became less and less likely that these candidates were going to end up winning primaries, and the winner-take-all states sort of took away from here. So Donald Trump started receiving large amounts. Even Mike Pence said that he voted for Ted Cruz in the primary. Surprisingly enough, Donald Trump chose Mike Pence to be his vice presidential nominee. But looking at these numbers, honestly, just not a good look for the Republican primary process because Donald Trump was able to absolutely obliterate the field despite only winning by a simple simple plurality. So I'm going to go ahead and try to find, I don't know if they have all of the primary results in total. I think that they did for a little bit, and then they weren't able to pretty much put everything together. But, as the race went on, Donald Trump was able to take states that he had only narrowly won by a plurality. I mentioned Georgia because it's a very good example. This was a proportional state, but it's also one that Donald Trump received a lot of the delegates. He received most of them because he was the winner, even though he only technically won the Georgia Republican primary by, 14%? I mean, it wasn't a resounding victory. It was more so that he was able to get the plurality vote. I mean, only 40% of Republicans wanted Donald Trump in 2016. It's a very different story now. But looking at those numbers, I mean, Donald Trump was not exactly the number one pick for a lot of Republicans, and that's the main issue. Looking at this 2016 Republican primary for potential Republicans that want to run in 2024, that's alarming for Ted Cruz. That's alarming for Marco Rubio. That's alarming for any of these other potential Republican candidates that are on this list so far. All of them are polling under him. And while at initial glance you may say, How is 45% good for an incumbent president? Well, that is pretty good, considering Donald Trump ended off with that being the presumptive nominee with no one else in the race. Could only reach 45%. Honestly, Donald Trump is the immediate shoo-in for the 2024 Republican presidential primary because he could easily replicate exactly what he did in 2016 with 45% of the vote. I mean, honestly, it was just such, not a good look for the Republican Party. Looking at this, we can actually compare the delegate count. I mean, take a look. What you see is that in some of these states, they are winner take all. They were winner take all. And because the primary process ended up, I would say, helping Donald Trump, because if you look at the convention roll call, a lot of states ended up flipping because we knew who the nominee was going to be. But looking at the initial results, I mean, let's take a look at some of these states, right? We see some yellow for Ted Cruz, but looking at this entire map, you would assume Donald Trump absolutely obliterated them, and arguably he did. But you have to take a look at those margins. You have to take a look at the states that are considered to be winner-take-all. South Carolina is a perfect example. Donald Trump won 100% of the delegates despite not even receiving a third of the vote. Not even receiving a third of the vote because of this winner-take-all system. It was honestly not a good sign for the GOP looking that, this was going to happen. Donald Trump was going to win the plurality of the vote every single time when he won and still receive a lot of the delegates. Alabama, 43% of the vote. 30 more delegates than the second place person. Arkansas, Donald Trump received 33% of the vote. Ted Cruz, proportional. So that's one of the better states. But you head over to Georgia, winner take most. Donald Trump receives 42 delegates. Ted Cruz receives 18. I understand the margin was pretty large, but keep in mind that still, it should not have been this lopsided. I mean, he dominated Massachusetts. I will say in Minnesota, a split between Rubio, Cruz, and Trump. But it was not one of those states where it was able to be a winner take all. It was very difficult for Trump to actually end up winning that. So let's go back because I don't want to actually we can just go ahead and skip through Oklahoma. I don't know if it's going to take us to the next Republican primary. Let's see. I don't know if it's going to take us. I think that it's probably not going to. Okay, let's go ahead and jump over to Tennessee. But looking at the I don't know why I did that. It's really interesting. Okay, so I guess they combine the primary pages with the Democrat and Republican. But what you see, Donald Trump receives 38% of the vote, receives a lot of the delegates in this state, 33 to 16. Taking a look at Texas, this is actually not so good for Ted Cruz. Why? Well, despite him being able to win the state's Republican primary, it was not a winner-take-all system unless he received more than 50% of the vote. He simply couldn't do it, so Donald Trump still received a pretty solid chunk. Looking at a lot of these states, Donald Trump won by a plurality. But just wasn't able to get, above that majority mark. But it really didn't matter because it would have mattered if this was a Democratic primary. It would have mattered if this was any other type of election season or any other type of nominating process. But because the Republican primary nominating process allows candidates to pretty much obliterate any of the others through the winner-take-all system or the winner-take-most system, Donald Trump recognizes that. He recognized it back in 2016. He rode that plurality vote and the popular vote and in the statewide vote to victory, and he can do the same exact thing in 2024 because what we are seeing now is that in states such as Georgia and other states that have preliminary election data, what's happening is, Donald Trump is the favorite in some of these races. I mean, they literally have numbers from Georgia. What we see is when Donald Trump is included on the ballot, 73% of Republicans want him. That doesn't correlate with the 45%. 45% maybe nationally, but if Donald Trump just gets a plurality, much less 73%, that's the largest margin of victory would be for Donald Trump in a primary besides 2020. Looking at those numbers, Donald Trump could easily just walk in to being renominated. Not to re-election. That's a topic for another video, but being renominated because he did it in 2016, and honestly, he has the numbers to do it again, and if he chooses to run, I can guarantee you he will clear the field. If Mike Pence that's on this list, Donald Trump Jr. that's on this list, he will take them out of consideration, and they will subsequently, those voters will go back to Donald Trump, and he will have a very easy pathway to being renominated. So overall, 2024 might just be another year where we see President Trump on the ballot because of this Republican primary process. 45% wouldn't be enough in the Democratic primary process. 45% is more than enough for the 2024 Republican primary process, considering how many Republicans want to run as well. Absolutely could see a split between Ted Cruz, between Marco Rubio. Again, same exact thing could happen. John Kasich probably won't run, but the chances are that a number of other Republicans are going to jump in the race because it's going to be an open nomination. Even if Donald Trump runs, while he may move out some of those Republicans from running, we will still see a considerable amount running against him. but chances are they're not going to be able to coalesce around one candidate. Donald Trump still remains a popular figure within the Republican primary, and he's already starting off with the minimum of 45% of the vote before the primary process, 3 years before it even begins. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 presidential election videos. So in about, a few seconds, it's going to end the video at 2024. Hopefully it does. Let me know in the comments. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.